Do you ever sit there and think, this is mental, that I'm sitting here in a piping hot bath, dehydrating myself, losing all this weight?
I think it's only numbers at the end of. You've got to take it off some ways.
Racing up towards the finish, search for the song is winning back-to-back artists and legends. A special moment for Oisin Orr.
Jane Foley and Pat Smullen can gallop up to me and one of them either side. I think when I got back to Wales, I got it for a bit as well, but I didn't try and do that again.
Spirit Dancer and Oisin Orr in control here in the Strensel and goes on a win again at York.
Oisin, thanks for joining us. Good to have you here. I want to start off really quickly, run down through your career. Obviously, it's been full of highs, maybe a couple of lows you could tell us about later on. We'll touch on the highs first. Irish St. Leger in 2020.
Yeah, it was. Look, it was my first Group 1, and they're very hard to get. And look, it was great feeling. It was during COVID, so it was a very quiet time, but look, it was still great to get. So we won't complain.
Won't complain.
No.
And you've ridden, I can't really count very well, but I'm assuming over 200 winners, if I'm right?
Yeah, I think it would be around that. I'm not exactly sure the number, but it would be around that, yeah.
So let's go back to the start and how you got into racing. I remember riding pony races somewhere in Galway back in probably 2014, maybe thereabouts. Riding a horse called Omega that you'd ridden previously and won on, and I gave it a terrible ride around the pony racing circuit. But you started pony racing at around about what age?
I think I started when I was really small. I'm not exactly sure what age. I think it was maybe 9, 10. But I didn't really start riding horses till I was, I think, 13, 14, 15. So, but yeah, I'd ridden that horse before. He was a bit of a runaway, to be honest. And I was just a passenger. Yeah.
Well, I was definitely a passenger. I went about 100 mile an hour down the back and fell in a heap.
Yeah.
I think you actually won that race as well, so you made the right choice that day.
Yeah, well, that's it.
Yeah. So when you started riding 12, 13, did you know then, I want to be a jockey, this is what I'm going to do?
I wasn't really sure, to be honest. I'd always kind of ridden ponies when I was younger, but as for racing, I wasn't really sure. My brother first, he went and I think he became an apprentice, and after that I went to Joanna Morgan's and I tried it out for a summer and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
My weight wasn't too bad, so we'll give it a shot.
And you ended up at Eddie Lynham's, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, yeah. I started off in Eddie Lynham's. I was through Robbie Downey who I'd got to Eddie Lynham's, and I got my licence there when I was, I think, 17.
Yeah. And were you Champion Apprentice in Ireland?
Yeah, I was lucky enough. I was Champion Apprentice twice. So.
Twice,
yeah.
So not just the once, had to do it twice.
Exactly. But now we're lucky enough. They're 2 good years, and hopefully we'll keep going forward from now on.
Yeah. And then talk us through that transition from 2-time Champion Apprentice to riding for Dermot Weld. That in between that Champion Apprenticeship and getting to that St. Leger winner. What happened in between there? How did you go from Eddie Lynham's to Dermot Weld's? And
I'd been in Eddie Lynham's, I think maybe 2 years, and I think I could have been getting down to my 3-pound claim, and I'd had a word with Pat Smullen who said it might be an idea to go in and maybe just ride out a day or two there and see how we went. And I think just before I'd went in to ride, I got a ride from Mr. Weld in Goran, and I'd won. So from there on, I was tipping around. I was still riding out for Eddie, and I'd went to Mr. Weld then a couple of days a week. Just kind of from there.
And how influential was Pat during that period? Obviously, Pat passed away a couple of years ago. I was lucky enough to speak to him just a handful of times when he was riding in England, and he was always super friendly, full of advice. I thought he was an absolute quality rider, probably one of the best I've ever seen, and an absolute gentleman as well. But how influential was he on you on your transition?
Well, look, he'd been a big help to me, kind of from when I was claiming 5 till whenever. But you could always ask him anything, and he'd tell you whatever you needed to know. He was a gentleman, and as you say, he was a top class rider. But he helped me out a lot. And even when I was riding for Mr. Weld, I'd ring him in the morning of the race. He'd talk me through the race. I'd ring him after. He'd give me advice or things I should touch up on or whatever. But no, look, he was very, very good to me, and look, it was great to have his advice on the side.
Yeah, and obviously worked because you won an Irish Classic. What I always wondered was, after that St. Ledger, which obviously was a fantastic day, I can only imagine it was monumental. But after that, things got a bit quieter for you.
Yeah, they did. Look, after that, I had a very good year, and I'd still been in Mr. Weld's riding, but at the time I'm not sure what jockeys he wanted. But I think Colin Keane, it could have been Colin Keane the next year after that. He just had a word with me one morning and says that Colin Keane was going to be riding a lot more for him the next year. But look, I kept my head down, worked away, but I suppose there's only so much you can do with that before you have to move on.
I know you say you kept your head down and walked away. What I want to talk about is that reaction when he told you. Because a similar-ish story is when I was at Roger Charlton's and there was no number one jockey, and I thought, I've been number two for a year, I'll slot in, get a bit ambitious. And he pulled me into the office to say Jason Watson was going to be number one. And I went back to my house and ripped the couch up and started punching the walls. What was your reaction? I know it's you don't want to tell us that you didn't take it on the chin.
Yeah.
What was your actual reaction when that happened?
Well, look, it is a bit disheartening, to be honest, but it's racing. I think you just have to keep your head down and keep going. If you get too worried about things, I think it's not really worth it.
Give us a bit more than that. Did you punch a wall or not?
No, I don't. I was lucky enough I didn't. I don't kind of get really wound up about too much. There's plenty of times you get jocked off horses, and I think the least you say, the better. Sometimes it's a big wheel. It can always come back around. So I think if you say too many things, it can always come back to bite you.
Yeah, and obviously you kept kicking after that, and just kept your head down, like you said. But was there a period in there after that news was broken to you and things were a bit quieter that you lost a bit of confidence, or were you always riding at that same level? Did it affect you really in your riding?
I suppose you do lose a bit of confidence, because if the people you're riding for want someone else, probably because they think that they're better than you, then I suppose you do lose a bit of confidence. But I think you've got to believe in yourself as well. It's all got to come down to the horses you're on at the end of the day. If your horse isn't good enough, you can't carry them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the difference between jockeys and footballers and stuff, isn't it? Is that a footballer can show how good they are, but a jockey needs that horse to show how good they are, don't they? So
yeah, well, that's it exactly. It's racing at the end of the day, and you can have the best horse, but I suppose you've still got to steer it as well. You can always get that round too. So, but not usually the best horse wins.
So what I'm interested in as well is that after that quiet period you had, that link into Richard Fahey's, how that came about, and because to me it was a little bit out of the blue. I hadn't seen you riding for him much, so how did that come about?
Yeah, look, I'd never actually rode for him before, so I got talking to Mouser Ryan one evening, and he'd said to me, he just asked how I was getting on in Ireland. I told him I was doing okay. I was keeping busy, but I wasn't really getting many rides out of it. And he just said, would I be interested to go over to Richard's and see what I thought? So he said I'd go there in a week trial, and if I liked it, just stick around and see how we get on. But I went I went the next morning, and I didn't go back for maybe 6 months home. So I loved it. It's a great place to work, and there's lots of nice horses there too.
Brass band starting up just to get
they're starting up now.
I want to know about your very first conversation with Richard Fahey, if you can remember it, because I remember not my first, I'd spoken to him, but when I was licensed in Ireland and wanted to move across as an apprentice, I rang him up and he said, I'll tell you the same thing I told everyone else, come over and we'll see what happens, we'll give it a go. Was it sort of similar conversation that you had with him? Was he quite blasé about it?
Yeah, look, it was kind of similar to that. He just said he'd come over and see what I thought, and he'd say the same about me if he thought I'd fit in well or I wouldn't. And look, I think when I got there, I'll end up staying with him for maybe 4 months. So
yeah.
But look, he's very easy to deal with, which is a good thing.
Did he take you into the Derwent Arms?
Yeah, I got into a couple of them places. We got around a couple of the pubs, but look, he's a great man to work for, and I can't complain.
Yeah, I always thought he's fantastic. What I always found really interesting, and it might be different because I was an apprentice there, but when I rode for him, the instructions were limited. It was generally 95% of the time was happy handy kid, ride him how you find it.
Yeah.
Is it the same now? Does he give you those instructions, or is it different for his number one?
No, it's still the exact same. Just keep it as simple as possible, but I suppose when it doesn't always go that way, so you can have to turn to plan B a couple of times, but no, he's very easy to ride for. And
But I always find as well that gives you the freedom to be the rider that you want to be in a way, because you can look at the form, and sometimes it's difficult, I think, when a trainer ties you down to instructions and you're thinking the pace is there and he's there and I want to be here, and a trainer's telling you to go forward or drop in. But when you get that freedom, you can ride your own race, or you can go to plan B when you want to. Do you think that helps you be a better rider?
yeah, I think it makes a big difference, to be honest. I think when you do get tied down to instructions, you're kind of limited of what you can do, because if you don't do it, you're wrong. If you do it and win, you're a hero, obviously. But 9 times out of 10, I don't think the race goes as everyone might see it. So it does give you that bit more freedom, and you can just ride the horse as you feel it, rather than having to just do exactly what you're told. You're kind of riding on feel, really, and I definitely think it's a bonus.
Yeah. Talking about riding on feel as well, this is one thing I'm going to ask every jockey on the podcast, this one. When you're riding a horse, for, say, someone who's listened to this who's never ridden a horse before, might have never even watched racing before, I always find really interesting how different jockeys use their hands, how you get a horse to relax. Could you explain in the simplest terms you could what you're doing or what it feels like when you're getting a horse to relax?
Well, I suppose it is different for everyone, but I think a horse, the tighter you hold the reins, the more it's obviously going to pull out of you. So,
Why is that? Is that tension?
I think so. I think the more you're trying to take them back, the more they want to go forward. Whereas if you're in behind another horse and you have maybe a looser rein, I think they're a herd animal. They're not going to, well, 9 times out of 10 they'll relax, but the odd one would run up on heels and maybe clip heels. But I think the more relaxed you can be on a horse, the more relaxed they generally be. So
It's almost like a psychology.
yeah, well, that's what I think. And
then you've obviously ridden a classic winner. Tell us, what does a classic winner feel like? If you could describe someone, again, who's never sat on a horse, because I think you could tell me how it feels and I might be able to understand you, but someone who's never sat in one, what's that feeling like?
It's hard to explain, really. I suppose every jockey anyway wants to ride a classic winner. They're very hard to ride, because the good horses, there's always good jockeys looking to get on them horses, and but it's a hard thing to explain.
I always thought the best ones I rode, it was like a feeling of like electricity or a coil spring, or you feel an energy underneath it or something.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's just a great buzz, and I suppose you're buzzing off it for a while, maybe a week or two after. But I think I watched the replay a good few times.
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
So,
How many times do you reckon you watch it? Couple hundred.
Yeah.
Do you reckon you could recite like the commentary word for word?
Yeah, I think I had a head cam on as well through the race. I think I gave Colin Keane a shout, and he was lucky enough he let me out. So, but I can remember it well.
Yeah, good. And then let's get away from racing for a bit. What do you do outside race? Have you got hobbies? Is there something that interests you? Another sport? What is it?
I go out golfing a bit with Ryan Sexton, who I live with. None of us are very good, but I think it just passes the evening. When you're not racing, you can sit around the house and do nothing really.
Eat food.
Yeah. I think it's easier to keep away from the fridge if you go out and do something.
Yeah.
If you're sitting around the house, it's a long day.
Yeah.
You can always put on 3 or 4 pounds easy.
So you're knocking about the course. What other jockeys do you play golf with? Is it just Ryan, or have you got a couple of you lads that?
There'd be a couple of us. Tom Midgley, he rides a bit over jumps, he'd be there, and Charlie Wilson, who's a valet, he comes out a good bit with us, but it's only just a knockabout. We played
Only a knockabout. Does it get competitive though?
It does, yeah. We played a couple of times with David Nolan, he's very competitive. David Allen, Jimmy Sullivan, they're all good at golf, and I'm not too sure they were happy with how bad we were, but look, we're learning. If you could improve your golf, is it a golf handicap, is that what I call it? If you could improve your golf handicap or ride a couple of more winners, which one would you? I'd go more winners all day.
Would you? Yeah.
I do golf just for the fun of it.
Just for the fun.
Yeah, not serious.
Yeah, fair enough. So that's all you do outside of racing? Must be something else you do.
unless it's going out for food or going doing something else. But I'd maybe do it twice a week would be enough.
Yeah.
Losing my head a couple of times and
Lose your head a couple.
try and sell everything I have, all the golf stuff.
So it's not like a relaxing hobby for you then?
No, definitely not. It kind of annoys me more than anything.
So what do you do if you need to switch off? Obviously golf isn't very relaxing, we've established that. If you need to switch off away from racing, what do you do? Is it Netflix or is it?
I don't know. The racing seems to be on every day in the house, so there's no really getting away from it. I like watching racing, so. But I've been watching the Tyson Fury thing on Netflix at the minute. It seems pretty good, so we'll keep watching that.
Yeah. So is racing an obsession for you then? You can't get away from it. Is it in your mind 24/7?
Yeah, I enjoy watching it. It's probably not in my mind 24/7, but I just enjoy seeing what's going on, who's riding winners, and what horse they're doing what. But I think I just enjoy it more than anything.
So with all that, I'm still going to call it an obsession because I think it is an obsession. With that obsession, what's the ambition? If we were to have the same conversation in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, and you could turn around to me and say, yeah, we're successful, I've done a good job, I feel like I've done something, what does that mean for you? Where would that be?
Well, I suppose everyone rides to be champion jockey. It's a hard thing to do. You have to work really hard, and I think I'm only here just a year, so I think the longer you're here, the more contacts you get, which will probably help in the future. But I think that's an aim, to be champion jockey. Whether it happens or not, it's another thing. But we'll be working hard towards it.
Yeah. Would you have that above a Derby, an Arc? You'd rather be a champion jockey?
I think so.
Yeah.
I know everyone remembers the Derby winner, but I think everyone remembers a champion jockey as well. But it's something I would like to do, and I know I'm tall enough at the minute, but I think I've got my weight under control, and it should make it maybe a bit hopeful that it could happen.
Yeah. And Richard Fahey has produced champion jockeys in the past. Obviously, Paul Hannigan was champion jockey, I think, twice for him back in the day. So
yeah, exactly.
It's not impossible for you to do it.
No, it's not impossible. Look, Paul done really well there, and it just shows you it's not impossible to do. So I think with the right horses and a bit of luck, it could happen.
Yeah. And so, what haven't I asked you yet that I should have asked you? Like when you were walking in here, I know you had a short brief when we walked in. What should I be asking you that people don't? What do people not know about Oisin Orr? What would you like people to know about Oisin Orr? I don't put you on the spot.
Yeah, you can. I'm not sure. I think most people would say I'm very laid back, which is, I think it's a good thing in this game. I think with the wrong head, you could lose your head very easy. But this game's hard work, and I think it's every day as well. You can't just do it once or twice a week. You've got to put the work in, day out. And I think that makes it more rewarding at the end.
Yeah. So what does an average day look like for you then when you wake up in the morning? What time are you getting up, and what's your process?
Yeah, well, usually I've got to be in work for 7, so it could be, depends how tired I am. I could get up 5:45 or 6:30, but I usually don't eat before I go to work. I could ride out 3 or 4 lots. Then it just depends what weight I've got. I've got to lose a bit of weight before I go racing. I usually jump in the bath, lose a couple, and then go racing. Come on.
I love that. I jump in the bath and lose a couple. You make it sound like it's just sitting down on the sofa. For people who don't understand that process, how difficult is that? And what's your... Because I'm going to talk a little bit about my process in a minute, but what's your process when you're sitting in a bath, piping hot, sweating? What's your mind doing?
Yeah, I try and be on my phone so you don't really be thinking about it, but I think as time goes on, it actually gets easier. When I first started off, if I had to take off a pound, I'd be legless, but I think as time goes on, it gets a lot easier. I could lose probably 4 or 5 now, easy enough, and still feel good after it. So, but I'd just be sitting in the bath and flicking through my phone, to be honest.
Do you not think it's crazy? You can sit here and say, I can lose 4 or 5 and feel fine. Because like you said, that when you first do it the first couple of times and you lose a pound, it feels horrendous.
Yeah.
And then your body gets so used to taking off 4 or 5. Do you ever sit there and think, this is fucking mental, that I'm sitting here in a piping hot bath, dehydrating myself, losing all this weight, and it's just 4 or 5 pounds?
Oh, that's it. I think it's only numbers at the end of. you've got to take it off some way. So, but I think when you're riding nice horses, it always makes life a lot easier. When you're riding bad horses, it's hard work taking it off.
Yeah, I found that towards the end is part of the reason why I stopped riding was I wasn't riding many good horses, but I was still having to sweat, take 2 or 3 off. Not as tall as you, so I didn't have to sweat probably as much, but I still had to take a couple off. And it was not even so much being in the bath, but getting your foot in that bath when it's that hot was like, this can't be worth it to be riding the horses I'm riding.
No.
But if you're riding good ones...
Yeah, well, that's as I say, for bad ones, it makes life a lot harder. It takes a lot of effort to get into the bath, but look, I think when you've got good rides and good opportunities, I think it becomes easy.
How long are you in the bath for? Generally, day to day on average?
It depends really how much. If I had 2 pounds to lose, I'd say I could lose it in maybe under an hour. So
yeah.
If I had 3 or 4, it's obviously 2 hours, but
Yeah.
you'd always take a break in between and you feel fine.
Well, that makes it alright then, the break in between.
I think so.
I don't think so,
No.
really, no. I think if the average person jumped into the bath that you were getting in, as hot as it is, would think, what is this guy doing? This is absolutely mental.
Yeah, well, that's it too. I suppose from the outside looking in, they think you're probably crazy, but I think in racing, I'd say not the majority of jockeys have probably done it. Maybe the odd couple haven't, but I think the majority of jockeys have done it at some stage.
And so, we've talked about your long-term ambition, champion jockey. Short-term, next 6-12 months, what's the ambition there?
I'd like to ride 100 winners in a year. I suppose that's a hard thing to do as well, but I suppose with the same as it, with the right opportunities and putting the right work in, I think it could happen. I think I've got 48 so far, close to 50. So.
Do you check that every night?
No, maybe once every couple of weeks.
Once every I feel like that's a lie.
Yeah.
You're checking at least once a week.
I don't really, to be honest. I think if you can look too much into things.
Yeah.
Once you have a couple of winners every week, it adds up. So I try not to check too often.
Yeah. I used to be on it every week, but it was easy because it was only gone up by 1 or 2 each week, so I could easily keep track of it.
No, well, that's
it's a bit different.
it's a bit different, but
Yeah.
no, I suppose we're not riding loads of winners, but if you get 2 or 3 a week, it's a good week.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you about sacrifices and what you're sacrificing, and obviously making weight is a sacrifice. We've talked about being in a bath and sweat, which when you think about it is mental.
Yeah.
But it's part of the game, and as a jockey you accept it. What other sacrifice have you made in terms of, is moving to England a sacrifice? Being away from your family, is that a sacrifice for you, or?
I don't really think so. I talk to my family most days, so but I've been away since I was, I think, 17, so you get used to it.
Yeah.
I think everyone my age, you kind of miss holidays and stuff, but you can do that during the winter. I know a lot of people my age, especially from home, would have gone away on holidays to
Magaluf,
Ibiza, all there. You miss out on stuff like that, but I suppose when you're making money and getting winners and riding nice horses, it sort of levels out.
Yeah. But that culture change from Ireland to England, because I thought that was, when I moved over, it was a bit of a shock for me. Because obviously the language is the same and it's kind of the same sense of humour, but it is different. And especially in Yorkshire, it's probably a little bit more Irish than, say, Southern England. But was that a culture shock for you moving to England? Like, what was different, or what haven't you really gotten used to?
Well, I think I get on with most people, to be honest. I think where I live, Malton's fairly laid back. But I think the driving is probably one of the hardest parts since I came here. And knowing in Ireland,
What's the farthest you drive in Ireland?
I think Listowel or maybe Killarney would be the furthest. So when I was in Ireland, it felt like a long way. But
Yeah.
when you're going to Ayr and it's a 9 meeting, 8 o'clock, and you've got 4.5 hours back, it can be a long way.
Yeah.
Like Goodwood as well. I done that in one day as well. I think it took 12 hours.
You won't do that again?
No, no, definitely not.
Yeah. We used to get, the last time I went from Malton to Goodwood, I went with Barry McHugh, Nathan Evans, a few lads, and we got one of them little planes.
Yeah.
So it was all fine on the way there. On the way back, a couple of lads, I wasn't actually drinking at the time, but a couple of lads decided to have a few beers, and Nathan went into the front seat beside the pilot, and we cut it up into the air and we were flying along. it's one of these really small rattly things.
Yeah, yeah.
Before Nathan realised that the door was still open, he hadn't closed it properly, and he turned to the pilot and was like, "What do we do?" And the pilot was just like, "I don't know."
Yeah, there's not really much you can do at that stage,
Yeah.
I suppose.
So, I wouldn't recommend flying either.
No, I'm happy enough to stay on the ground. I don't mind flying in big planes, but I'm not really sure with them small ones. I'd be happy enough to stay out of them.
Yeah. So other culture changes, because, and the lads in the room won't understand this one, but chicken fillet rolls, food, it's
Yeah,
not the same over here, is it?
No, I think the biggest thing I miss is the delis.
Delis, yeah. I don't understand why. Can you tell people what a deli is? Because English people, I don't know why these aren't everywhere.
Yeah, well, that's what I think as well. Ever since I came over, but I suppose it's a mixture of all sorts. One thing that I can't find in England is jambons. They don't seem to have them.
Because you'd
but
kill for a jambon, wouldn't you?
every time I go home, I eat about 10 of them.
Yeah. And they put some weight on as well.
Yeah, they put weight on, but they're
Worth
not. Yeah, they're worth it at the time, I think. I suppose it's just a mixture of different foods that are.
Yeah. It's a bit. The only way I can explain it to English people who don't understand is it's a bit like Greg's if you upgraded it by 1,000,000 times.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's got your steak bakes, whatever you want, pastries, but it's got baguettes and sandwiches, and you can put whatever fillings you want. It's got 1,000,000 fillings.
Yeah,
Hot
okay.
chicken, and the general choice is a spicy chicken fillet roll, isn't it? Just a bit of spicy chicken, breaded chicken in there.
That's it, and you can get them over here, and it doesn't taste the same.
Not the same.
I don't think. No, it's not the same thing. But I suppose everyone has to try one to know what they're like. But
Yeah.
yeah, they're nice.
And what about? Have you ever tried a pint of Guinness?
I've tasted a sip out of one, but it was rotten. So
Really?
I never tried it.
I'm disappointed to hear you say that now.
Well, I suppose being Irish, it's not common, but
So
I
what
think
would you drink when Richard Fahey brings you into the Dermot? What are you ordering?
all I have is a vodka lemonade. Would be
That's it.
yeah. I don't really go away from that.
So you don't
Whether
touch
it's-
beer or
No, I don't really, and I suppose beer puts on weight as well. If you drink vodka, you're always lighter, so I think it just makes life easier in the long run. But I don't stay away from beer and stuff like that.
So we're talking about culture shocks. We've been through food and everything else. Bit more sort of a deeper subject, I think, is that moving away from home, as you mentioned earlier, when you were 17, moving away from your family. That's a culture shock in itself. How was that when you moved away from your family? What was the big difference?
Well, look, it is. I suppose it's a lot for most people, but I moved 3.5 hours away. It's still the same country, so I suppose it's not too bad. You can always jump on a bus or whatever to get home, but at the same time, you don't really get home that often. It's racing. You're always expected, if you're getting or want to get your license, you're expected to work as many Sundays and Saturdays as possible. So it's always a bit hard to get home. But I think my parents they'd make plenty of effort to come and see me when I couldn't go
Yeah.
and see them, which is I suppose a big thing when you're younger, to have them and them come and I suppose you do get a bit lonely at times when you're that age. But no, look, I can't complain. I have a very good family and they've been very good to me, whether it be pony racing, driving me around the country, or they come over here and visit me as much as they can.
And then, so how often do you rely on them now? Like, do you speak to them still every day now? And what's that relationship like? 'Cause obviously it changes as you get older, and it goes from, like you say, when they're driving you around pony racing, they're your parents, to now all of a sudden you're an adult in this pretty senior job. So what's the relationship like with your family now, and how involved are they in your?
Well, my father, I don't think he misses a race, to be honest. He'd always tell me if he thought I'd done something wrong or if he thought I'd done something right. My mother maybe wouldn't have as much of an idea about racing as him, but look, I speak to them a good bit, and look, it's a good help whenever you need a bit of help or something. They're always there, so no, I can't complain.
What's the one thing you had to learn? Because I think you're thrown into an adult game at a very young age. What was the one thing you had to learn really quickly? For me, I was really socially awkward. So I'd walk into the way and I wouldn't speak to anyone because I was just really shy. And that got, I think, mistaken for being cocky.
Yeah.
And I heard from everyone else that I was cocky when I was like, how have I been cocky? I've not been speaking to anyone.
Yeah.
When I think about it now, it was because I wasn't speaking to anyone, they assumed I was cocky because I was walking in, I rode a couple of winners and then walked back out and didn't speak to anyone.
Yeah.
What was it for you? What did you learn really early on? What did you have to learn?
Well, I think that, as you say, the weight room can be daunting enough with all them when you're starting off, especially them top class jockeys are in there, and you might get a bit shy or stuff like that. But I don't know. When I was starting anyway, I think when I moved away from home cooking was one of the things you had to learn. You've got to survive some way.
So how are your cooking skills now?
I can cook, yeah.
What would you cook if I asked you to lighten up a dish?
Steak. I'd eat steak every day of the week if I could.
Really?
Yeah, I love it. But that would be one of the things that I enjoy cooking.
What are you having with the steak? Is it just chips or what?
Asparagus usually. That's all. Yeah, a bit of vegetables.
Fancy, man.
No, it's not fancy. It's all put in the one frying pan and cooked up.
Yeah.
But now that'd be something I enjoy.
And then going back to the weighing room. So, is there a senior jockey or a jockey on your level now that you'll speak to, not more than others, but who's more of a like confidant or someone that you get on with better in that weighing room sort of environment?
Well, look, in the weighing room you're sat beside different people most days, so
yeah.
But I talk to everyone. I think everyone in there now is very friendly. I suppose as an apprentice you probably think it's more daunting than it actually is, because probably 9 times out of 10 if you ask someone for any advice then they give it to you. So I think as you get older you kind of realise you can't speak to everyone and have a normal conversation.
Yeah, I think for me it was Paul Morenin, who when I was that apprentice and I wasn't talking to anyone, he pulled me aside a couple of times and sort of helped me with that transition. Have you had someone help you with the transition since you moved from Ireland, or has it been?
It's actually been pretty good, to be honest. Ever since I came over, they've been really friendly, and I've got to know most people in there now. So I've no bad words about it anyway.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't say it publicly anyway, would you?
No, I probably would if I had something to say, but no, this time I don't think I.
Do you notice a difference between the northern weighing room and the southern weighing room? Because I always thought when I was riding up north, it was maybe a little bit friendlier.
Yeah, well that's.
And maybe give you a little bit more room. Down south seemed a little bit more, don't want to say cutthroat, because they are friends as well, and there's obviously great relationships within the weighing room. You can see who's friends with everyone, but they are a little bit.
Yeah, well, I'd say that too. Probably up here, because we're here, it's probably makes it more friendly or whatever. When you go down there, they have their own cliques and people they talk to. So I suppose you're coming down to them and getting in their weighing room or whatever. But I think at the same time they get friendly and they seem pretty okay.
Have you ever had a proper argument with someone in the weighing room?
In Ireland, Pat Smullen actually nearly dragged me off a horse when I was playing at 7. Yeah.
What for?
I think I was drawing 9 and I jumped out, and he was in Bellewstown, and I just made a beeline for the rail.
As you do.
Yeah. But I think I took maybe 4 or 5 people out of it in the process. And I just remember I'd won. I got by the line, and I think it could have been Shane Foley and Pat Smullen came galloping up to me, and one of them either side.
God.
I think when I got back to Wales, I got it for a bit as well.
Yeah.
But the next day it was all forgotten about, and I didn't try and do that again.
Talking about Shane Foley, my very first ride for Johnny Murta around Dundalk, he told me, whatever you do, don't be any more than 3 wide.
Yeah.
Like for your first ride, that's a bit of an ask. So I was drawn like 7 as well. So I've jumped out and I'm 3 wide, and Shane Foley's on my inside, and I screamed at him to get in out of pure panic, because I thought Johnny Murta's going to box head off me if I come in here. And I'm 3 wide on my first ride. So I shouted at him to let me in. He obviously didn't. And we're pulling up, and because everything was such a blur, I'd forgotten about it. And like that, he came galloping up to me and was like, "Who do you think you are, telling me to get in? Wait till I see you." So I came back in terrified, thinking, I'm going to go into weighing him, he's going to kill me. So I said to Johnny, Shane Foley said he's going to kill me. And he said, just tell him Johnny Murta said, fuck off.
Yeah.
So I went in, put my saddle down, Shane Foley's walking towards me, and I just went, Johnny Murta said fuck off. And he turned around and walked away laughing.
Well, that's it.
So I got away with it. But it's daunting, isn't it?
Yeah, it was at the time. I suppose I was claiming 7, and I might have been very green, but I probably knew what I was doing. But that were my instructions at the time, and as you say, when you're told instructions, that's what you try and do, especially when you're claiming 7. But I won on the day, but I heard a lot about it after. So
you paid the price.
Won't forget it.
Yeah. So let's go from Goran Park and Flatland lads to America Breeders' Cup. Can you tell us about that experience? Because obviously that's a bit different from Goran Park, and it's a pretty big deal. So
yeah, it was. We had the Platinum Queen last year. It was I think it could have been the first horse I sat on when I came to Richards, and she was a lunatic, and I thought, what are these things? But anyway, she ended up being a good filly, and I rode her out most days. I think she rode out maybe 3 days a week and went in the treadmill. I got lucky enough then to, well, he asked me did I want to go to the Breeders' Cup. I was going to miss a bit of racing here, but it's a trip away, and with a good filly like that, I couldn't say no. But I went out there. It was a great experience. I suppose it's a lot different. You've only got one horse to ride, and that's your job for the day.
Yep.
And I went out and done a bit of sightseeing.
Sightseeing, is that what we're
that's
calling
what
it?
I'm calling it. Yeah.
Can we be more specific than sightseeing? Because I seen a smile on your face as soon as you said that.
Well, there was a good group of people at the time, so I actually got in to see Coolmore and stuff like that out there. We got to see a bit of the place, and it was a good nightlife as well.
Good nightlife.
Yeah.
Is that as far as you're going to go with it? Like, or
I think that's fair enough.
you can expand on it a little bit. Come on, nightlife. What's it like compared to where are you from originally?
I'm from Donegal. So
Donegal.
yeah.
I'd imagine it's a bit different from Donegal.
Yeah, it'd be a lot different, and it was kind of a college place as well, so it was always busy. I think I'd only one job to do in the morning, and I got that done. The rest of the day, I done whatever. But we went out a good few nights, and it was good fun.
Yeah. Vodka lemonades, or
Yeah.
did you branch away from the vodka lemonades when you were in America? Or
No, we stick to that.
That's your staple.
I think that was enough for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say on that before we move on, or is that as much as you're going to give us?
Yeah, I think that's enough. Yeah.
Okay. Aside from the nightlife and the misbehaviour that I can only imagine that you got up to, what were other culture shocks in America or around the Breeders' Cup? Because we've talked about difference between Ireland, UK. What's different again about America?
Well, I suppose out there, the horses were riding out around the track, and I'm not sure, it was very early in the morning anyway, but there was people queuing up to see horses riding out at crazy hour in the morning. It was still dark. But I suppose that's one thing different there. I suppose here you can't really see that side of it, horses riding out, unless you go to a yard. Whereas there, they were at the track, and I suppose anyone could go and see them really.
Yeah.
I thought it was just mad that the amount of people that actually came out to see one or two horses riding out. It's crazy.
What about the fanfare on race day? So we've got the brass band blared there behind us, if people can hear it, at York. What's the fanfare like in America? Is there a difference? Is the crowd different?
I think it's just, well, there was a crazy crowd there the day I was racing, but there's not really much room to move. It's probably a lot different here, I'd imagine, but I'd say there might have been a lot more people on the day. I think everyone went to the Breeders' Cup. Everyone wanted to be there, and I think they were there for all day, every day, so they probably made a week of it.
Yeah. And is that something, because you touched on a little bit earlier, we'll go back to it now. You touched on earlier when you won the St. Leger, it was during COVID, and presumably there wasn't a crowd there.
No.
Is that something that you look back on and think, I wish there was a crowd there for that?
Yeah, always. I think it's just it's a different kind of buzz when you ride a winner in front of a big crowd. When you ride day-to-day winners, I know at small meetings there can be a crowd, but when you come to these big meetings, it's crazy the difference. Even the atmosphere around the place is a lot different, and when you're coming up to the line in front, it's a good buzz. You could hear everything.
So what was the difference then on Irish St. Leger Day when you crossed the line and there is no crowd? Obviously still incredible feel, you've won the Irish St. Leger.
Yeah.
It's massive, big deal, but there's no crowd. Is it like an immediate deflation, or is it
it's not
a disappointment? Or?
It's not. It's hard to describe really, because you've rode a big winner. You're on the high anyway, whether no one else is there or not. But I suppose it's always just nice when you do hear and get more of a buzz off the crowd or whatever. Even when you're walking back in, you get congratulated or whatever. But I suppose at that time that's the way it was, and I wouldn't change it anyway. I wouldn't give back the winner to have a crowd there.
Yeah, fair enough. Talking about crowds, where's the best crowd? What race course? Ireland, England, wherever. Where's the best crowd?
I think York here gets a pretty good crowd. Most meetings anyway. I've been to Ascot in the bigger days, and it can be the same, but I think York is close by, and I think it's a good buzz around here, and look, it's good to be riding here. You know?
How much for people again at home who don't understand? How much of that crowd do you hear when you're riding? Do you sort of block that out, or does it hit you hard, or does it depend on the track?
I think it depends how well you're going. If you're out the back on your own, you can hear everything. But if you're in a head-to-head finish, you generally don't hear too much. I think it's supposed to probably be different, and how many horses are in the race and stuff. How much you're probably concentrating of whatever. But no, I think it's crazy the difference of maybe the small days and the big days, and the crowds around the place. Even now you can see the amount of people. It's 11 o'clock in the morning and there's people at the racing. So yeah, that's good.
I always think, have you ridden many at Chester?
I've ridden a couple of times at Chester. Yeah,
that Chester is quite a unique one, isn't it? Where you've got crowd both sides and it's quite a small track. I always think you can hear people literally screaming your individual name or your horse's name as you're winging by.
Yeah.
Versus you get to York and it's just a big massive rumble.
Yeah, well that's it. It's probably a bit more open here, but I think in Chester where it is closed off and there's people both sides, you're definitely going to be hearing that. But look, I suppose everywhere is different.
Yeah. And then let's talk about the negative side of the crowd. Have you come back in and had abuse from people? Have you heard people shouting stuff that's not particularly nice, or is it always generally pretty good?
Generally pretty good, but I think at Doncaster sometimes you pull up, you've got to walk in by the crowd, and there's always the odd people at the end of the race and that's not really happy, and it could be the last race. They might be probably out all day and whatever, but I don't pay too much heed to that. You just carry on.
Yeah. And I assume it's the same with social media. You said you don't pay too much heed to it. But
yeah.
That abuse that you get sometimes on the race course, but generally on social media, and I'm assuming like all jockeys you get quite a bit on social media. Does that affect you at any stage? Has it ever affected you when you were younger, or
I suppose
you always been okay with it?
Yeah, well, maybe when you're younger it can be a bit daunting, getting text messages off people you obviously don't know, that have lost their money for whatever reason. But I think as you get older, you block it out and you forget about it, to be honest.
Can you remember, and if there's swear words in it, we'll try and avoid them, but can you remember the worst one that you've ever had, worst message?
You get stuff like, go break your neck, break your legs, all this stuff, but I think it's generally off someone who's made up a fake account and whatever, so
yeah,
you don't take too much heed to it.
The worst one I got, because it actually hurt my feelings,
I
was a couple of years in at this point, and it had stopped bothering me generally, the messages I got. But I got beat on a favour for Fahey actually at Chester, second or third year, and he messaged me saying I was a one-season wonder and good luck, you're never going to have a career. And he turns out he was right, but at that time, because it was a bit more personal, he put the effort in to realise I was having a bad second or third season and go, you're a one-season wonder, and that actually really upset me.
Yeah, well I suppose stuff like that can hit the heart a bit, but the stuff I got was nothing like that. I usually just block them, whatever they say, they get blocked, so whatever, it's good.
And generally it's not very intelligent abuse, is it? It's just
no, but that's exactly. Someone has maybe lost their head for a minute or two and they've decided to go on Facebook or whatever and say a few words, but look, it's nothing to worry about.
So that doesn't affect you. Whose opinion does affect you?
I suppose the jockeys.
The other jockeys?
Yeah, well that's it, exactly. You always find out if you shouldn't have done this or that. I know I've got older now, but still sometimes in them bigger races you can always be told off or doing something you probably shouldn't. Before
I let you go, I'm going to ask you two quick questions. I'm going to ask every jockey that we have on at the end of the podcast. First one is, if you could give a piece of advice to your younger self, to young Oisin Orr, what would you say to him?
Well, I think for me, it was always about, you've got to keep your weight day in, day out, rather than letting it go. Like over the winter, you can easily let it go, and it's nearly impossible to get back down to whatever you want to be. But I think it's always about that. You've got to keep your head down all year round. Maybe you can have whatever, obviously the holidays, 2 weeks, 3 weeks off. But I think throughout the year, you've got to keep your weight right and keep your head down.
You said be more consistent with your weight and...
Yeah, more consistent, exactly. And I try and not say too much. Keep your head down and keep your mouth closed.
Last one, final one before we let you go. If you could change one thing about your career, if you could go back in time and fix something, change something, what do you think that would be?
I think I would have moved moved to England maybe a year earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, the job probably wouldn't have been there, but I think just I'd probably waste a year tipping around doing nothing really.
Yeah. So you feel like you've wasted a little bit of time and you'd like to get that time back?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, it's worked out well for you then. So
yeah, exactly. So we can't complain now, but just looking back, I think that's the one thing I would change.
Thanks, Wayne, for coming on. Really appreciate it, and hopefully speak to you again in the near future.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks.